hour, and I'll tell you more. Depends on how many irate citizens we show up. Hello, Bob.
Evening.
How are you? Got your blue tie on. Blue's a
You-
sign of.
Crete Monee colors.
You had any more calls?
What'd you say?
Had any more calls about
No, this entire month I heard from one person.
That's not surprising.
No, one person. That's it.
It's minimal, and oh, and then the state did do. They passed a couple of bills today that'll one that helps corporations, and then they passed the one that'll help homeowners.
Yeah.
And how about the one to help with pension people?
Sounds to me like those two, they're helping those two people at the expense of.
Yeah, they passed. Okay. Well, let's see. They passed Senate Bill 397 that lowered the amount of money that they're not going to tax Sears, but they still got their bill. And then what was the other one? 400 something. I think it was.
Wasn't the standard exemption?
Here it is. Yeah. Let's see. Senate Bill 400. Standard exemption to the got kicked up $50 or something like that, and the earned in tax credit went up. And then Senate Bill 397 did pass, but they figured it'll cost schools about $938 million in the end. Or it's going to cost the state about $938 million.
The survey says it's going to cost us something.
Oh, yeah, sooner or later.
Who are we recognizing tonight? Do we have any? Are we doing any recognition?
Let's see. Well, we got the hearing first. Around the district.
Must be. These kids.
Got to be recognizing somebody, but I don't know who. Who are we recognizing in around the district tonight?
Fall sports.
Oh, good. We ought to have a big crowd then.
Yeah.
Looks like we're going to have a real big, angry crowd.
That's what I said. That's what I said.
He emailed and I responded.
Good evening, everyone. It's 6:30, a little bit after 6:30, but just want to remind everyone that if you'd like to make a public comment, that there are public comment forms in the back to please fill out with your name and a contact information. That way we can get back to you on that. We do have probably 2 public comment sessions this evening, one before the meeting takes place and the other one during the meeting, which would be comment on the tax levy. So either one of those comments, please fill out a form back there and we'll get started very shortly. Thank you.
It's freezing.
looking, I'm like, it just so happened the first one was the only one that was there. Like 2 titles for $65. Now
We heard from Kim. She'll be here for sure.
and then the lady's trying to help me, like, just
I had a couple emails from her. Seemed like she was.
it was
Hey, Mary, Nancy.
How are you?
How you doing, Maria? Is that Christmas bonus?
Thank you.
Good. I wanted to put in a new pool this year. You see our two motions that we want to make tonight. Pass the levy and abate February. That's if we get the money, we can abate $2 million. And it means that we can still levy it next year without losing our money.
5 or 10 minutes, and you can just say there's no public comment, then move on to the round two.
I don't really have this
You have any public comment, Carter?
What do you do for
Okay,
Christmas?
well, good.
At your house?
Well,
Good evening again. We'll still give the public about 2 or 3 more minutes. If there's anybody out there that'd like to fill out public comment forms for comment prior to the meeting, please feel free to do so and bring the comment forms up here so that we know that we need to let you speak. So we'll give you a few more minutes and then we'll get going. Thank you.
Tom Kaczynski, can you come up here for a second?
It might take a second for it to, if you open up Internet Explorer, I'll be kick in. So.
Yeah, let's just hope that we don't have the same issues we had last time. My laptop was crashing.
Oh, yeah, let's.
Windows
that was
isn't working.
1914-66. Okay, cool.
Good evening once again. I'd like to ask one more time if anybody has public comment forums that they'd like to speak prior to the meeting beginning. Please bring them up right now, and we'll entertain your speaking. So.
She's sick. She's got sick today. She had to go to the doctor's. Her eye was hurting real bad.
This tax levy stuff, do that prior or after? You do it public comment.
So we just have to wait.
Okay. Just as a reminder, we do have 2 public comment sessions that we're going to have this evening. One is just on general comments of agenda items, and because we do have a forum for a tax levy, that will be a separate public comment forum. So if you're making comments about the tax levy, we'll probably defer that until a little bit later on in the meeting immediately. So. So far, I have received 2 of them. One of them is dealing with the tax levy, so we'll defer that one until a little bit later. But I do have another one from Marianne Muscatel. Just general comments. You can speak if you want, or how would you like me to do this? Okay. Yeah, I know that the band program was one of those things that we had talked immensely about, but they're showing quite a bit of improvements and good things that are happening there and stuff. So, we'll try to continue with it as much as we possibly can. So, thank you very much for the comments. I don't have any other comments for right now for prior to the meeting, so I'm going to dismiss the public comments immediately for agenda items and move into around the district, which is the fall 2011 sports recognition. So I'm going to turn that over to Dr. Rogers.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Starting last year, the Board of Education wanted me to bring forward either some special program, special event, a student accomplishment, or a staff accomplishment to the Board of Education to be recognized publicly, so that it could be, first of all, just brought to the attention of the board, but brought to the attention to our public, either through our website or through the newspaper. And so this is our second year. Last year there was some conversation around formal recognition that's done on an annual basis with our student athletes. And that has evolved over the last few months into quite a few conversations. In fact, tomorrow we're having a meeting with Mr. Cahan, myself, and a few other people in the district to talk about to try to formalize the athletic recognition plan, where we're talking about how do we recognize conference athletes, regional and sectional championship teams that may occur within the district. What do you do with state individual accomplishments that may happen at the state level, both team and individual? How do you recognize the scholar athlete? How do you recognize the college-bound athlete? And what about a Hall of Fame or a Wall of Fame for the school district? So these are all the things that we have been discussing, and we are very close to a formal plan that we will be presenting to the board within the next few months this year. We did decide that this year, though, that we would make it a annual thing to recognize students at the end of their season who have minimally have been recognized at the conference level. They've made all conference, so they've been recognized within their own conference as being a student that is worthy of recognition on up. And so we think that we will do that, we will do it in the wintertime for fall, in the spring for winter, and we'll do it in the fall for the spring of the previous year, because by the time the spring sports are completed, school is almost over with, and sometimes the students aren't even really around to bring them back. We'd have to bring them in June, and school is over, and sometimes it's very hard. People go on vacations immediately and so on. So without any further ado, I want to turn it over to the athletic director of the high school, Mr. Gene Cahan, who will then call up each coach, and then we would like the coach to speak a little bit about the successes of the team and to call the individuals up. Then I think, like last year, we're going to have one board member, since there's about, I think there's 7 teams tonight, one board member to go down and take a picture with the coach and that team. And then, as I said, there are some gift cards that we have for the students tonight who are being recognized, and we want to get those pictures because we're going to do a story on our website. So, Mr. Cahan.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers and the board. It's a pleasure to be here. You know, overall, I think the people sitting out here know what an outstanding fall season we had. Lots of accomplishments, lots of good stories, bad stories, all that kind of stuff. But it was a pleasure for me, I know, going out, getting around to most of the competitions or seeing most of them either home or away, just to watch our kids compete. I'm always marveled at the things that they can accomplish and the truly fantastic things that they do. The first coach I want to bring up is our head volleyball coach, Miss Christina Jones.
All right, good evening. The 3 girls up here I'd like to introduce to you are Brittany Camilli, Maya Tops, and Ashley Cernick. Ashley Cernick, she's the one right here. Go ahead and step forward. She's a senior here at Crete. This is her 4th year receiving all-conference. She's been a 4-year varsity starter and just been a great addition to our team all year. The next girl I'd like to talk about is Maya Tops. She was all-conference in 2010 and 2011. She's a 3-year varsity starter, and she's been a captain for 2 years. She made all-tournament team at the Rich South Tournament, and she was also our MVP this year. The last all-conference girl I'd like to recognize is Brittany Camilli. This is her first year as all-conference player. She's a junior, 3-year varsity player, 2-year starter, and she's just been a great addition to our team. This year is also the first year that we've had any girls going out for any type of college-level volleyball, which is a huge accomplishment for us. So I'm really excited to see what these girls do in the future and how the girls in the program fill in their shoes. Thank you.
Okay, Christina, keep them together. Miss Sanders is going to be the first board member. Come on down, Miss Sanders. Or Melissa, how do you want them, up on the stage or down? Okay. All right. Okay, let's congratulate them one more time. Thank you.
Next is boys soccer and Julian Lagunas.
Good evening. The Warriors finished their season with a record of 18-2-3. We won a conference title and a regional title this year. We outscored our opponents 132-18 in 23 games. Our goalie, Luke Hogan, had 16 shutouts. Matt Sadowski was named All-Sectional Honorable Mention. His twin brother, Ryan Sadowski, is not here today, was named All-Sectional, and Carlos Posada was named All-State for the second time. We had two players, Ryan Sadowski and Carlos, that are named to the Southtown All-Area team. Carlos was named to the Player of the Year for the Southtown, the Sun Times, and the Northwest Indiana Times. Carlos finished the season with 67 goals, the second highest single season total in IHSA history, and he also broke the state record for most in a career with 176. We have all conference players, freshman Fernando Aguirre, senior Luke Cogan, and his brother, sophomore Jake Cogan, Matt Sadowski, senior, and Ryan, Jesse, and Carlos are not here tonight.
Let's congratulate them.
Our head girls tennis coach, Mrs. Kelly Place.
Good evening. I had 4 all-conference girls this year, which was wonderful. I only have one of them with me tonight. Oh, I have 2 of them with. Where'd you come from? Okay, this is Caleb McMorris, which was a wonderful surprise. Someone called me after 3 weeks into the season and said, "Can my daughter come out?" I'm thinking, "Oh, great. Here's another kid that doesn't know how to play," but she does. She was very good. Great surprise. All-conference. What's with her partner Whitney, who's not here. And then we have Tina Muscatel, who is our captain and also our MVP player, who also took all conference as first singles this year. We had a great year. The girls became good friends. Thank you. There you go, girls.
All right.
Oh, my little muckraker.
Our head boys cross-country coach, Brian O'Donnell.
All right. Good evening. Thank you to the Board of Education and to the administration for recognizing our all-conference athletes. Quick recap of the boys cross-country season. We had a pretty young team this year. The team that we ran at the conference meet had 0 seniors, so they're all coming back next year. We placed second as a team. We had 2 all-conference athletes who are with me tonight, and that is Josh Millsap and Bryce DeLuca. And they also were sectional qualifiers this year for the first time. This is Bryce, his second all-conference accomplishment. He's a sophomore. He placed 4th at the conference meet. Josh placed 9th at the conference meet. So it's exciting. They're both coming back next year. They're our team leaders. They have been all year. Knew that going into the season that these 2 are going to be people that we had to count on. So, I think next year should be very successful for both these 2 athletes, but also for the team at large, hoping to overtake Bloom and reclaim the conference championship. So it's going to definitely require these 2 athletes right here with me. So great job this season, and looking forward to next season.
Our girls cross-country coach, Lisa Werner.
Good evening. The 2011 season was great for girls cross country this year for several reasons. The first thing I want to recognize is just the fact that we had 18 girls out and 18 girls complete the season, which was a little growth spurt for us, which is nice for things to come in the future years. The girls, in terms of their dual and triangular meets this year, won all their meets with the exception of 1. They had some top 5 finishes at invitationals. They were 3rd at the Hillcrest Invite, 3rd at the De La Salle Invite, and 4th at the Tinley Park Invite. I'm going to come back and talk about conference in just a minute, but they placed 4th as a team at the regional meet, qualifying them to advance to the sectional meet. At the sectional meet, all 7 girls ran their personal best of the season, which was a great way to finish out the season. In terms of conference, the girls did win conference this year, and to be all conference for cross country means you finished in the top 10, and Crete had 5 girls in the top 10 this year at the conference meet. Ilea Foy finished 8th at conference. Chastity Powell finished 6th. Latrice Daniels finished 5th. Grace Flowers finished 3rd. Grace was one of our co-captains this year, and Grace was also our most improved runner. And Taya Foy was our conference champ this year in 1st place. Taya was our other co-captain and also our MVP this year. So great job again.
In boys golf, we actually have co-head coaches. So if I can have Adam Hullinger and Robert Taylor come down.
Hey, this year for boys golf, we had a lot of great victories this year. We have 4 out of our 5 all-conference golfers here, with Miles Bailey as our all-conference medalist. Let's give him a round of applause for that one. We have Mike Wojciechowski. He's not here right now, but let's give him a quick applause. He was all-conference number 2. And respectively, we have Robert Russell, Tyler Christensen, and Jeremy Horvath. Out of these gentlemen, to qualify from regionals to sectionals, we had our all-regional champion here at Crete Monee with Miles Bailey. And our 3 qualifiers, we had Jeremy Horvath, we had Mike Wojciechowski, and Robert Russell. Let's give them an applause. As a whole this year, we're only losing, I believe, just Jeremy and Tyler, right? And Wojo, that's right, all 3 of them. Otherwise, we are ready for the next year. We have more golfers coming. Try to spread the word. Let's get some more people out there. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you. Okay, come on over. All right, hang on. Miles. Very good. Jeremy. Rob. I'll give Wojo. Yeah.
I can introduce our head football coach, Jerry Verdi.
I apologize for our low numbers, but we had our banquet last night, but the juniors did come.
Jerry, tell them how many people showed up last night.
We had over 270 people at our banquet last night.
Yes.
And to publicly recognize the PTO, they did an amazing job decorating our cafeteria. It was really fantastic. These guys can attest to that. Brief program overview. 5 years ago, we had about 120 kids in the program. First day of practice in August this year, we had over 170. That's about 10% of our student population are involved in the football program. We have many accomplishments this year. The regular season, now this is on all 3 levels, varsity, sophomore, and freshman, we were 25-2 total. The varsity program hasn't lost a conference game. The varsity team hasn't lost a conference game since 2007, and we only lost one, and we should have won that one. This year, our varsity team completed its first undefeated regular season in 59 years. We were ranked throughout the season in most publications and websites, and the attention we received this year in the media was like nothing we had ever experienced before, and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger with each year. Testament to the young men that are standing up here. And I'll just focus on them. Just to start off, all 3 of these young men, these are juniors, they're all scholarship athletes as long as they get their ACT score right in the spring. In particular, Laquan here has been already offered scholarships from Michigan, Notre Dame, Nebraska, and Indiana already. Since they're offensive players, I'll just kind of give you a rundown because it's pretty amazing. Starting with Marcus Terrell, this year he passed for 29 touchdowns and 2,822 yards, which is a school record. Okay. Lance Lenore, receiver, 48 receptions, 625 yards. Very impressive. And he also will probably play some corner next year. And Laquan Treadwell, 75 catches, 1,391 yards, and 18 touchdowns. Quan was also our school's third All-State football player. He was the Conference Offensive Player of the Year, the Northwest Indiana Times Player of the Year, Chicago Tribune All-State, Sun-Times All-State, and our MVP on offense. And we have a lot to look forward to next year. Thank you.
Well, I just want to say to all of the parents, first of all, tonight, that we applaud you and we take our hats off to you for how that you support your children in their accomplishments, both athletically and academically. I and the board and the audience, we salute you. To the students, we also are very proud of each and every one of you, not only because that you have displayed, your talent on the field, but most of all, for most of you, we understand that you have also displayed great talent in the classroom, and the combination of two is the most important thing together, because it can be a ticket for you not only in learning how to play in team sports, which means, giving and taking and compromising and good sportsmanship and good conduct at all times and being an example and being a leader for especially young people that come behind you. But those are all good character skills that will make you successful in life. And so we applaud everything that you have done. And so, again, parents, is your chance to applaud your children again tonight. The only thing I would like to say before I turn it over to the president, who may have other board members speak, is, tonight I've been trying to push myself personally to see more events that I normally have not seen. What comes to mind this year is a meeting that I had with some of the soccer parents and Mr. Lagunas and his assistant, Jeff Polson. And although the meeting was about trying to problem solve some issues, I never forget the parents challenged me personally. They said, "You know what? We haven't seen you at any of our games." And they said, "You need to come and see what we're about." And so I made a point of it. I called Mr. Cahan and I said, "Look, I know I'm busy and all that, but I said I've got to come and make good on my promise." And so I did remember, I don't know what the date was, but it was a sunny afternoon. It was a home game. And so I would like to just encourage all of the coaches here that do not feel afraid to email me and say, "You know what, we would like to see your program," maybe even some of the presence of some of the board members if they're able to. All of them aren't able to. We all work, and sometimes some of your games are not in the most opportune time for a working schedule. But for me personally, it's easier for me to do home things, but if you can give me an email and do it a couple weeks before the event, I really want to try hard next year to push myself to at least make it to a few more of the events other than the traditional ones. And, you know, we know that the football team gets a lot of press, and certainly what the boys soccer team really did great and so on. But all of the programs did really, really good this year, and I'm really excited that we have a lot to build on for the future. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to our president, Mark Rose.
I'd just like to, again, thank all of the student athletes that are out there for showing up along with the parents. I know the board is very appreciative of all of the efforts that all of the athletes make every year in their seasons. And one of the things that I really like to touch on, Dr. Rogers mentioned it very briefly and stuff, but I got a couple emails from some parents on when you guys go and visit. You know, when you're away, and I got some positive comments in regards to how the athletes conduct themselves, how they handle themselves with the other athletes as far as not getting in somebody's face, you know, doing things like that where you're conducting yourselves with the sportsmanship that makes Crete Monee proud. So I just want to commend everybody for maintaining that kind of attitude and bringing that and mentioning it to make sure that everybody's reminded of that. So, you know, keep up the good work, and you know, it makes Crete Monee community proud. So, you know, thank you very much again. So. Anybody else wants to? If you want to, you know, it's up to you.
Well, I would like to say congratulations again. I love this portion of the board meeting because I like to see firsthand, you know, what's going on in our schools. And I know, you know, personally being a former student athlete and having children of my own that are student athletes, how difficult it can be to maintain your schoolwork and, you know, the demands of being an athlete. So I want to commend all of you for that. I also want to challenge you to take those skills that you've learned as an athlete, being responsible, being a team worker, and apply them to your personal lives and your academic lives, because a lot of what you learn as an athlete will help you in other areas excuse me, I'm sorry, of your life as well. And I want to say to the long-distance runners, I was a long-distance runner, so that was a special, you know, thing for me to see. So congratulations to you guys, and congratulations to everyone else. And also those of you that are going to take the ACT, and I think this is the last try coming up, I think in the spring. We just had one last weekend, right? Believe in yourself. The very, you know, tenacity and determination that you use as an athlete will help you to do well in the ACT. So study hard and believe in yourself even when no one else does. And like I always would tell my own kids, own your sport, own your destiny, and believe in yourself. If nobody else does, at least you know how far you can go. So congratulations again to everybody.
Yeah, I'd just like to say congratulations to the student athletes. I think it's tremendous, and I'd like to see you transfer all those qualities from the playing fields into the schools. And I've, years and years, well, before anybody here was born, I did some of that stuff. And I tried volleyball. I got spiked once. That was enough. It really hurt. I gave up long-distance running in 1970. Football, they tried to use me for a putting or a kicking tee. But you guys work hard, and you do. But I would also like to thank the parents, because I don't know if the athletes understand it, but you don't know what it's like to sit in those stands in the rain and the cold when it's really nasty out there. But it gets very warm when you're winning. I've never seen a coach that didn't smile and strut, and parents that weren't really grinning and feeling really well up in those stands when the teams were winning. And you guys have had an excellent year. And I hope it continues all the way through, and I hope you have the same kind of successes in your future wherever you go and whatever you do. Thank you.
I just would concur with every one of the members who've spoken prior to me, only to add that,
I've said it before, bad news travels fast. Good news doesn't always travel as fast. But the idea that you guys have brought to this school and to this district, the pride of the Southland, is tremendous. We honor you for bringing joy and bringing so much success academically as well as in your sports accolades. And again, the fact that you have done this with great prowess, great tenacity, as I believe Board Member Hall stated earlier, is having been at some of the games, it is just with a lot of pride that in visiting other schools, we don't act like animals. I have to actually say that, and that I'm very proud of that, because it would be one thing to just win, but to win mean is not a good thing at all. So the idea that we know how to act and know how to be well-rounded, good citizens, and not just simply a sports person, but that we are well-rounded and we are actually educating soon-to-be world-class learners. So thank you very much.
Yeah, again, I want to say thank you. Being a freshman board member up here, sports is dear to my heart. My daughter, when she was in high school here, was a senior female athlete of the year. And I want to assure you that I will, at some time, get out to see every sport, everyone, tennis, swimming, golf, soccer, the whole 9 yards. First came on the board, I had the opportunity to travel all the way out to Monee, and am I saying it right? Monee? Yes, Monee. And I cheered until I couldn't talk. And the ride home was just as enjoyable as the ride going. So I want to have that same experience. And it doesn't matter if you win, just me being there with your students, participating, watching you guys compete, that says a lot. Keep up the good work.
I wanted to say congratulations to everybody. Tom stole what I was going to say about thanking your parents, but I think you should also thank your coaches because of all the hard work that that they put in to support you and to encourage you, and they truly are role models. So I think someday, years in the future, you're going to look back, hopefully, with fond memories of the good training and sportsmanship training that you've had. So congratulations.
Okay. Thank you again very much for coming to the recognition. We're going to move on with some of our agenda items here and stuff, so I'll give the student athletes and various people out there that are associated with the sports time, give them a couple minutes if they'd like to leave. You're more than welcome to stay for the board meeting, but from what it looks like most of you want to go someplace else. So happy holidays to everyone that's leaving, and like I said, you're more than welcome to stay.
Can't blame any of them.
Okay, well, it's amazing how he can empty out a room very quickly, but we'll begin the meeting here in just a second. And I'd just like to remind anyone that if they do have public comment in an upcoming public forum for the tax levy, if you filled out a piece of public comment form up there, if you could bring it up so that up to Dr. Edison or Melissa, we can take care of that when we get to that section of the public meeting. So with that in mind, I'd like to call the meeting to order. And the next item after calling the meeting to order then is we'll get a roll call here by the secretary. So will the secretary please call a roll?
Mr. Brown?
Here.
Mrs. Coletti?
Here.
Mr. Heisel?
Here.
Mrs. Sanders?
Here.
Mrs. Stockton?
Here.
Secretary here. Mr. Rose?
Here. You stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The next item we have immediately on the agenda is we're going to address the tax levy. I believe that Bob, our finance director, has a presentation he'd like to make first, and then after he's done with his presentation, we'll entertain comments and questions from the board. So go ahead.
You're going to be on the screen, right?
Yeah, we're going to do an overhead, so if members want to go on the floor so you can see this, we can move right now. So
We're going to need to move down to the main floor.
Okay, good evening. This will be our 2011 tax levy presentation, and I'm just going to run through some information to kind of set the stage for a discussion that we could have between the public and our school board. This way I can get all the facts out so that everybody's working with the same set of information here. Basically just some background. Each year, during the spring of each year is when assessments will go out. The county assessor and local township assessors will assess property each spring. And then during the fall, those assessments are compiled and analyzed by the Illinois Department of Revenue. Also during the fall is a time frame when the school district is passing our annual legal budget. And then in November, like we did this past November, we'll discuss preliminary tax information. That's when some information goes out to the public regarding the preliminary tax levy. The board starts to talk about the levy in November, and then during that time frame leading up until tonight, there's many meetings and discussions regarding the tax levy. And then tonight at the December board meeting is when the final levy is voted on, so that could be filed at the end of December. And then also during so then once that's filed during the winter, the county clerk makes adjustments to property values. And then finally, in May and August, the final bills are mailed out by Will County. The tax levy basically, as you know, is just the legal process in which school districts request local tax dollars to fund the operations. And then there's usually there's a public hearing each December when the amount of taxes being requested is greater than 5% of the previous year. Now this year, the amount that the district is requesting it's less than 5% of the previous year, but we're still having the hearing and the forum tonight, just to make sure that we talk about the tax levy, because it's still important, even though it's not going up more than 5%. And as I said, it needs to be filed. It says in the bottom there, before the last Tuesday in December is the deadline to get the levy filed. So pretty much this slide right here is the most important slide of the presentation. It pretty much, it just shows the levy is calculated with it's a three-step process, just using 4 pieces of information. It's actually very simple to come up with the dollar amount that is going to be requested in the levy. You take what the district collected last year, so that's the $33,759,000, and you simply increase that dollar amount by 1.5%. So the 1.5% is whatever inflation was. It's called CPI, which stands for Consumer Price Index. So for 2011, or actually for 2010, CPI was 1.5%. So you increase last year's amount by that amount, and you get the $34,266,000. So then you just take that total dollar amount and you divide it by the total value of all the property in the whole district, which currently is about $715 million of property value. So when you divide those two numbers, you come up with the tax rate. So the tax rate is that 0.048081. So basically $4.80 is what we would call the tax rate for this levy. You then take the $4.80 tax rate, which is established, and as you can see, that tax rate is established just through the math between the CPI and what we collected last year. You multiply that tax rate by the total overall property value, the $715 million, and the total extension on the levy then is $34,385,000. And then in addition to that, then the county clerk will levy enough money to be sure that the district can make its bond and interest payments for its we have 5 outstanding bond issues right now. Primarily the bonds that were issued to build this high school and Monee Elementary, in addition to the middle school. So those bonds need to be paid off. So the county clerk issues, it's not on here, it's on a later, it's about $10.5 million of bond and interest payments that get added to that $34 million. So the rundown for the levy then is, you can see that in 2010 we collected $43.88 million, and now for 2011, based on the property values that we have now, the total levy would be $44,900,000. So that's a $600,000 increase, which is 2.4%. So it's a 2.4% increase in the amount of money that we'll collect for the total levy. Now, that does not mean, that has nothing to do with how much does a homeowner's tax bill go up. What I'll show you here is, you can see that the rate last year was $5.73, and this year, based on the above information, the rate will be $6.28. Now, the largest reason that we're increasing there by 55 cents is, like I talked about with the property value being $715 million for the whole district. That basically means that since 2010, if you add up all the property value in the whole district, the value of the district declined by about 7%. So all property combined, total decline was 7% overall in the district. So when that happens, the rate in the formula that we talked about will go up by about 7% to account for that decrease in 7%. And then you add on top of that the 1.5% inflation we talked about, which is really the amount of increase that we're collecting, and then any changes in the debt service payments, and that's how you come up with a 9.7% change in the rate. So bottom line, what does this mean to an average homeowner in the district? You'll see that an example here of a $250,000 home. In 2010, that $250,000 home, the assessed value would be about 1/3 of that amount. So you take $250 divided by 3, and then you would subtract the standard usual $6,000 homeowner's exemption that that is typically that you'll see on a tax bill. So once you take that amount and you would multiply it by last year's tax rate, and the amount of taxes owed to the school district would have been $4,428. Now for this year, that same home, like we talked about, if it decreased by 7% in value, which is not going to be every home, but that's the overall average. So a $250,000 house that devalued by 7% would now be $232,000, and then they would still get their exemption, and then you multiply it by the new tax rate of $628. So the new amount due would be $4,491. So that's a $63 increase, or 1.4%. So I talked about how the amount of money that we would collect is actually going up 2.4%, but the amount that an average homeowner would see an increase on their bill would be 1.4%. And that's assuming that their EAV, their assessed valuation, went down the 7% that the district overall averages. Now, results are going to vary because, unfortunately, if your EAV did not go down 7%, if it stayed level, or if for some reason it went up or only went down 1 or 2%, the increase that you're going to see is going to be much higher than $63. But that's a situation where it becomes very important to watch what your assessed value is on your home, because if you see that all the houses in the district are going down in value every year, and for some reason your assessed value is not going down, that's an issue that you definitely need to discuss with your local and county property assessors, because the school district has no control, or we're not involved in the assessment process in any way. So quickly, just to see our budget that we passed for this school year, 2012, you can see on the very bottom, we started the year with a $15.9 million fund balance. Total revenue is going to be about $55.8 million, and total expenses would be $57.8 million. So we have just under about a $2 million deficit for the year. So we would end 2012 with a $13.9 million fund balance. Now on the bottom, I put a note with our $2 million deficit. If you look at the numbers, basically $2.2 million so all of the deficit plus some is being caused by reduced and delayed state funding for this fiscal year. And a big question that everybody always wants to know and should know is where does all the tax money go to? So these are the different legal funds that are set up by the state that the tax money is allocated to these funds. You can see it's primarily allocated to the education fund, which funds basically most things that schools do. And then operations and maintenance gets about $5.1 million. That's for basically the operations and maintenance of all the buildings and grounds and physical inventory that the district owns. And then transportation fund, which is primarily funded by the state, even though it's funded at a much lower level in recent years. But the property tax owner or property tax payers do contribute about $1.4 million to transportation. And then our IMRF and Social Security fund pays for all the payroll taxes for our employees. And then our working cash fund, we minimally fund a little bit of tax money for working cash. So for the operating funds, it's $34.38 million. Then to that amount, you add the bond and interest payments for the long-term debt, and then a little bit of money for life safety, and the total levy would be $44.9 million, and that's the allocation of how the money is used. So just a few quick questions. There's really, the question is what drives taxes up, and really it's four key things are going to drive a tax bill up, and there's a lot of down here this runs through the example of how it works, but really it's if your house increases in value more than everyone else's or more than most people, that's going to drive your taxes up, because the way the formula works is we're looking at the total district average overall. So if the district's property value is going up by 2% and your value goes up by 4%, the difference in the rate in the tax formula, the rate is going to adjust accordingly for that overall average of 2%. And if yours is going up by more than that, you're going to see an increase because you're going to see that rate go down. It's going to go down less than your value is going up. So this is traditionally what you've seen in the past is when property values go up. Now, recently we've been seeing values go down, so we would look more at this slide where it says your house does not drop in value as much as everybody else. So your house could even go down, say, 5% in value since last year, but everybody else's house went down 7%. So even though your house value went down, it didn't go down as much as everyone else. So once again, that tax rate is going to increase to account for the overall drop in the values, but it's going up by an amount that's higher than the amount that yours went down. It's kind of a teeter-totter effect. And if you look, that's why I say if your property value didn't go down by the 7%, you're going to see more than the $63 increase. Also, any component of any tax levy, the inflation portion is causing a little bit of the increase. So with inflation being 1.5% this year, you're going to see about, that portion of your bill is going up due to inflation. Like on the very first slide when we talked about the amount we collect would be this last year's amount plus whatever inflation was. So there's going to always be a small increase for inflation so that the revenue we collect can help, keep up with the rising costs of salaries and benefits and overall inflation. And then finally, the last thing you need to watch is the amount of debt that is being paid down by the district. The bond issues that we have 5 bond issues, they have a set debt schedule. And they start out, in the early years, you could be paying off a set amount, and that amount can increase over the years. It's set up when the bond is originally sold. You could pay off lower amounts towards the beginning, higher amounts at the end. They could schedule that debt accordingly. And really, if you look, if in a given year that the amount of debt we owe this year is higher than it was last year, of course that's going to cause the rate to bump up a little bit and cause the tax bill to go up. The only few factors that could help drive taxes down would be, like we just talked about with debt. If we paid off, say, $10.5 million of debt this year, and next year some of those bonds were now paid off and we didn't have to make as many payments, and the debt amount goes down to, say, $7 or $6 million, obviously that would be less money we need to collect in taxes to pay that debt, and the taxes would go down. Also, if the value of property in your community goes up faster in value than your property. So if everything around you is going up in value and your value is kind of staying the same, they're going to be taking on more of the tax burden than you. So really, it's always just it's really a comparison of your value versus everybody else's. And then also, finally, economic development. Basically, in general, any type of economic development is always going to be good for your future tax bill. If you see a lot of construction going on, if you see a lot of businesses moving into the area, in the long run, that's always going to help your tax bill because you're just broadening the tax base, and everybody helps share in the tax burden a little bit more, as opposed to, you can see right now, our district is very heavily reliant upon residential property. A little bit over 84%. There's very little commercial or industrial on the actual tax rolls. A lot of our commercial and industrial property is tied up in different taxing districts where the money doesn't come to the school district. It's called a TIF district, where it stays in the industrial area for redevelopment. And with those being tied up for up to 23 years sometimes, most of our value is residential property. And then I just have a note on the bottom to always remember that property taxes pay for about 61% of all of our expenses. This is just talking about, once again, in the past we always saw property values go up every year, and when the property values went up, then the tax rate would go down. It's an inverse relationship. So recently, for the last 3 years now, property values are going down, so the tax rate is going up because of how they're always opposite of each other. So that's just a new phenomenon that people aren't used to, but it is, that's the way that the formula works. This is kind of the calculation, the long calculation of how you come up with all the numbers, and it's just, it's really just something to reference if you want to later. It shows basically everything we talked about, how these formulas work. So on the bottom, you see that the expected extension, like we talked about, was $34.4 million, and then the balloon extension, which would be on the actual tax levy, would be $35.4 million. And the only difference there is on what we call this balloon levy, is that the district levies a number that's a little bit higher than the 34.4, so that in case new property, like you see in orange on the right-hand side, is currently listed at about $2.5 million. That's an estimate given to us by the county, and in April they'll have a final figure, and if that dollar amount ends up being higher than $2.5 million, the district would be able to collect more revenue from the new property. However, if you based your calculation just on the 2.5 right now at this point in time, come that time, if you didn't levy enough money, that additional amount that you could have received would be lost, and it would be lost from the district not only this year but every year into the future because of how the calculation is always based on the previous year. So what we do is we levy an amount that's slightly higher than what we think we collect just for a cushion, and then when property values do come in at, say, the $2.5 million, like they probably will, the county clerk adjusts our number back down from 35.4, and they'll set it back down to 34. And then at that point in time, we just sign off on this. This happens during April, and we would say, okay, we asked for 35, but based on the calculation, new property wasn't higher than we thought it would be, so we're only going to get to 34. So just some final key points that I just wanted to make sure that are perfectly clear is the district's deficit for this year would be $46.1 million with no property taxes. The amount of levy that we expect to collect if we ask for the full amount would be $44.9 million. So you can see that the 44.9 is less than the 46.1. The $250,000 home example we talked about, if it devalued by the 7%, the increase for this year will be $63 or 1.4%. And this $250,000 home that we're referencing would owe the school district about $4,491 for 2011. Our past levies, if you look historically since 1993, the tax levy increases usually about 7.4% on average from year to year. For 2011, our new property figure is very low, and inflation is very low, so our total increase is actually only 2.4% versus the historical 7.4%. And like I had said before, and I want to make sure it's very clear that if your value doesn't go down 7%, you will see a larger increase than the $63 that we're talking about, based on the fact that the tax rate is going up significantly to account for that large decrease, actually the largest decrease in property values in history in a one-year time period. So if your assessed valuation didn't go down, I would definitely question your assessment, because, like I said, property values have gone down more in 1 year than ever in history, so I don't really see why your assessed valuation would stay the same year over year. So the last 2 points are important. Options to help reduce property taxes have been reviewed by our board finance committee. We talked about it in detail for several hours just last week at the December 7th Public Finance Committee meeting. We went through 5 specific options that we could implement that would help reduce taxes for this year. And we actually later tonight, you'll see on the agenda that the board will actually be passing a motion later tonight to assess the feasibility of implementing one of these abatement options during the months of January and February. We'll look at that. March 1st would be the deadline to file any type of abatement for this year's tax levy. So the idea is to look in January and February at our financial condition, primarily based on the state of Illinois, if they're funding us, if they're giving us our payments on time, if we collect certain grants that we expect to be collecting. And based on that information that we could present in January and February, the board could take action on one of these options that, obviously there's pros and cons to all the options that will be discussed, but a motion will be passed later to bring that back up in January and February. So I pretty much took you through all the information. There was a lot to say in a little amount of time, but I think that helps kind of set the stage for some good questions or any comments that want to be made to the board. And then now would be the time to kind of have that forum and discuss the levy, because then later on in the business meeting, we'll just, it's just an agenda item that the board will have to vote on at that point in time. So right now is the good time to have all the discussion. And that's all I have.
Right now, we're going to work on the public comment portion of this tax levy forum. And I did receive one public comment form in regards to that from Sandra Hurd. I don't know if you'd like to come up and ask questions, or I can ask your questions here and then you can comment too. So one of the first ones is how property assessments have been affected by the drop in market value. The next question is assessment rate with taxing body equals tax dollars on the bill. And another question is how taxing bodies can keep their rates lower when assessments continue to decrease. So you can make comments in addition to what you got here, and hopefully Mr. Gruss can answer some questions or any of the other members of the board.
Okay, thank you, President and board members, for giving me a little time. My name is Sandra Hurd, and I am the assessor for Monee Township. A lot of good information was shared tonight, Mr. Gross. Where is he go?
Thank you.
There. And yeah, a lot. I agree with most of what you had to say, and really pretty much everything. I did want to add something to it from the assessor perspective. There has been reductions of assessments over the last 2 years because of the value of properties have dropped. That's been due to foreclosures and short sales and just the economic condition for our county and township has lowered those values. We don't know exactly when that's going to level off, so I can say pretty much next year they'll be lowering as well. One good news that you said, if the 7% was your bar, we all have been reduced lower than that this year in this township. The only exception would be is if someone had new construction, which there's very little of that for residential, or if they added something to their home that increased the value, like home improvements. Other than that, I think everybody's going to be in good shape as far as that goes. The other thing that I wanted to add was that you mentioned about the TIFs. I do believe one of the TIFs in University Park anyway, TIF 2, is going to be on the roads too for this year, so that's other resources. But I'm sure that's already in the numbers that they gave you from the county. And that, so a lot of times people, for the second question about how the assessment and the rates work together, I think he did a good job explaining that. Your assessment times your rate will equal to the dollars that you get.
And yes, as assessments go down, generally the rates go up. But I'm glad to see that you all are working on some options. I don't know if I'll be here to hear all of that, but the abatement I did. And that's all I had to say about that, is that there are some options that could be available to minimize the increase in the rate. And what was the third one? Yeah, that how you could keep your rates as low as possible during the times when assessments are going down, and it's going to be probably for at least another year, is to, you know, exercise some ideas like you're doing right now. We had, in this township, we had higher assessments from a prior assessor that has, you know, dictated from the time I came in that we had to start lowering. So we're going to be continuing to do that. Any questions for me?
I have a question.
Yes.
Right here. First of all, thank you for coming to the meeting and sharing your expertise. A couple of questions, just to verify, you're with Monee. You're the assessor for Monee Township.
I'm a Monee Township assessor.
And we service, it's Monee and Crete, right? So it's two separate ones. So you're speaking for Monee Township.
Yes, Monee Township only, not Crete.
Right,
Township.
Monee. Also, you mentioned Mr. Bruce's 7% average, and you said that on an average, Monee is lower than that, or did you say higher?
Yes, we reduced at a greater rate.
Greater rate, okay.
Yes.
So it's higher than the 7%. On
Our
average,
reductions
what
are higher than 7%, yes.
On average, what would you say would be the percentage?
It would be between 8 and 9.
Okay. So therefore, if it was between 8 and 9, the average increase that the taxpayers would see would be less? Am I saying that? Okay.
It'd be less than the
$63.
Yes.
The
Right.
example for
Yeah, the
that
bottom $9 would be lower than what
lower
it was
than the
last
63.
year if you use that example.
Yep.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, 'cause that's
I wanted to leave my information. Oh, wait, is there any other questions? We're located at 46 Town Center in University Park. If you have any questions, please feel free to stop by at our office hours, which is a Monday and Wednesday from 9 to 12 and Tuesday and Thursday from 9 to 3. Our website is www.moneeassessor.com. We can be reached by email at moneeassessor@gmail.com. And then our phone number is 708-534-6023.
Well, I just want to personally thank you, Assessor Hurd, for coming out tonight as well. I've known you for quite a few years, and every time that someone I know that may have wanted you to come out to address a homeowners association or whatever, you have been very accommodating. And I've been hearing through the grapevine just the new taste and the new flavor in that office. So keep doing what you're doing. We greatly appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, Ms. Hurd, I wanted to say the same thing to you that, right here. That's all right.
Hey, let's keep her up here all night.
Out of all the years, you know, that I have been at this level, meaning able to attend board meetings as a central office person, we have never had an assessor come out and talk to the board. So it's refreshing, first of all, that you would do so. And second of all, what I believe is refreshing is that you didn't hear anything tonight that's in conflict with the facts or the truth. So that makes us feel good that our information is as accurate as it should be for the public. And I think that if Maurice had anything to do, you know, with you coming out because of his personal relationship and knowing you, I commend him also for making that phone call or prodding your action to come out tonight. I think that if we can all of our communities, if we could just work together in more cohesion in terms of educating our public through the assessment office, through the district, through the different taxing bodies, I think everyone should be giving a similar presentation and helping our taxpayers understand how the taxing process works. Because I'm going to be honest with you, I think I'm a pretty intelligent person, but it wasn't until maybe 4 years ago that I really understood how the taxing formula works. So it takes, hearing it several times. I mean, tonight, I don't know how, anybody else felt about it, but because, I've heard this type of presentation, it's starting to really sink in now that I said, wow, that's one of the best presentations. I don't know how much clearer it can get, but I still know if you're sort of new to it, sort of a newbie, to taxes and tax bills and all that, it still may be difficult, but I think we just have to keep pressing and trying to find a multitude of ways, maybe showing it more pictorially. The simpler the language, the better analogies, the better examples we can give, samples of, this versus that versus if this changes, that change. Just to try to do everything we can to get people to try to understand it, I think we'll be better off. So again, my hats off to you. I really commend you. I really mean that sincerely. And hopefully maybe somebody can, me, whoever, we can put in some calls to Crete Township, and maybe next year we can see both assessors out.
Thank you. I just wanted to add one thing, too, because we understand a lot of people don't quite get the whole process and everything. We started last year having workshops once a month in our office to explain it to everybody. And when their tax bill comes out, especially, we ask them, please come in and let us, show you how everything is. So.
Yeah, anything that we can do together, like if we can advertise on our website those workshops, I think it's only to our advantage. I mean, to everybody's advantage to put out as much information about where the public can go to get more information. And again, to the public here tonight, Bob is very sincere when he says, come into his office. I've seen it happen all last year, especially, again, as you said, when the tax bills come out. Yeah. Sometimes, let's be honest, people are, sometimes they're upset because they don't quite understand how, the taxes were arrived at. And I think sometimes it just takes being able to have that personal touch, and sit down and walk people through it and be patient and answer all the questions as much as you can. And they still might not like it, but I think most people that I saw last year, they feel a lot better because at least they say, you know what, I might not like it, but I understand how it happened. And then they can be more active citizens in advocating for public bodies how to make the system work better for them. So.
Do we have any other public comments from the general public out there on the tax levy that we're currently discussing? If there isn't, then since this is not a formal public comment session where we have to legally go in and out of the motion to do that, I'm going to just ask that we're going to close the public comment session on tax levy at this time. The next item on the agenda is, do we need to go into closed at all?
No.
There's no closed session needed at this time, so the next item on the agenda is to approve the existing consent agenda as presented in the minutes of what we've got on the screens here. So I need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Move.
Moved by Mrs. Coletti, seconded by Mrs. Stockton. We have any discussion?
Mr. President, I have a question. On the consent agenda, and I just want to know before I vote, there's some items in the minutes of the closed session from the special board workshop that I have a question on.
Okay. As long as we don't get into personnel or things like that, things that, we typically can't discuss in open session at this time. Realizing that, you're discussing closed session minutes, so I just want to be careful on
It
just...
doesn't have anything to do with personnel.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so I guess it's more question / comment, and I'm actually looking to, or seeking for clarity and and clarity and more accuracy in the notes. So, for example, it suggests that you were surprised or either disappointed. Let me go back to it. That I'll just speak for myself, that I wasn't in attendance to the meeting. And I want to, for the record, note that in the September 19th meeting, I specifically stated that December 5th would not be a date that I could commit to. And I want that noted for the record, because one of the things that bothers me about the notes is that it suggests, and I want to be clear about this, attending meetings and being supportive of anything that is taking place on this board is a priority. However, if I do have something that supersedes that, and particularly my family in that case, I certainly knew that that wasn't going to be feasible. So the minutes suggest or sound a little, they don't reflect the actual position that I took and still take in regards to attending the board workshop, as I did attend the first one, and if another one is held and I could make it, I will attend that. But these minutes don't reflect, and I read quite a few of the comments. It's more derogatory in nature, and I think they should be amended to reflect what was already advised in September. What I stated, December 5th, was not a date that I could commit to. So that's my question to you. Were you not aware of that, or did that slip by?
I think that's noted, and we'll
And when you
do
say
what we
it's
can
noted-
to try to alleviate confusion or anything like that. I think one of the things that we had asked for was to make sure that the dates were clear with everyone. Of course, I don't keep everyone's schedules with me and stuff, and I have to rely somewhat on the administration in order to do that. So
Okay,
there
and
may
I
have been some
apologize.
miscommunication or something like that. So
Well, and I'm not talking about miscommunication. I'm just trying to verify with you, perhaps even if future communication needs to be addressed. On the night of the event, I only responded because I kept seeing, documentation. I would have thought you would have excluded me knowing in advance that I wasn't participating in advance. But apparently you did not know that.
there wasn't anything in the minutes that I can see here where we've actually used one of the members' names to.
Oh, I'm not
as
speaking,
far
that's,
as
I
that,
didn't,
so,
I said I'm speaking for myself, and it clearly states here who was absent from the meeting, so I can only speak for myself, and that's what I'm just asking.
Okay.
I want the
That's
record to reflect appropriately that you, or there should be some minutes somewhere from September 19th where I specifically stated that I would not be in attendance, so the president of the board would not be surprised or disappointed that I didn't show up to a meeting, or that there wasn't full participation in a board workshop. That's
Okay.
what I'm getting at.
It's noted in the minutes. Okay.
Well, I think what we need to do, that when these I'm just suggesting that when these minutes are approved, it's approved with that addition. And also, I just want to say personally that I did, I believe I had mentioned to the full board, if not for sure to President Rose, I brought back to, especially for you, Ms. Sanders, that you clearly did say, I remember it as clear as day, that you said that we talked about the 5th and the 6th, both days, if you remember, Monday, Tuesday, and you said that you didn't think you could commit to either one of them. That was in public, so it was said. So I wasn't surprised at all, and so I'll just leave it at that, because you're the one who spoke, so I'm only addressing,
And
your
Mr.
comment.
President, it might sound minute to you, but the other side of it is, we are speaking of public, we are speaking of improving communications and that sort of thing. So to improve communications, we need to so state things. And of course, to hear other colleagues say that there's a disappointment, I want to make sure that they're aware that just that that somebody would take time out to present a workshop, and that, there was just a blatant effort to not attend. And I don't know if they heard that before. It doesn't appear to, based on the comments that were that are listed here, as I said, it seems very derogatory, and I'm pretty shocked about it. But for whatever the case is, if we make sure that we communicate properly, that'll be fine with me.
Okay, that's fine. It's noted in the minutes. We're working to improve our communication. So,
and I would also like to address as well. I was not in attendance of this meeting. I have expressed in the past that I have had issues with my internet access, so I have not been able to access certain documents where the meeting was noted as far as the date. And me personally, something as important as a workshop, I would not deliberately not come to a workshop. So I agree with some of the things that Mrs. Sanders stated in regards to the minutes, but I believe that those discussion of that would be further needed with the full board at a later date.
I did know that you were having some issues with your internet and stuff, and I had asked the administration to do some technical debugging of your system over there. I don't know if that's been accomplished.
Never
or
took
not.
place.
Pardon me?
Never took place.
Never
I
took
was
place,
never
okay.
contacted like I was supposed
Okay.
to be.
No, we can follow up with that and make sure that it doesn't happen anymore. So I think we need to note that so that Mrs. Hall does receive her emails and that kind of correspondence from the district in a reasonable manner. And if there's an issue that's with her system or the computer that she's using at her home, we could troubleshoot it. I know that our technical staff has done that for my own personal computer at home. So, if there's an issue like that, it can be resolved and we can correct that. So, we don't need to have people saying that we didn't get anything like that when we're trying our best. So, this is just comments that were made, and there's nothing really derogatory that we're trying to accomplish with some of these things. So, it's just one of those things that we're working to solve as a board in general. So, I don't know if anybody has any other comments on the consent agenda then.
I'm just going to ask Melissa to make sure that you please note that tomorrow, hopefully, just for the board to know, Terry's not here because of an illness, but hopefully she'll be back tomorrow so that I can make sure that I call the technical department to make arrangements to come at your, whenever, we'll work it out so that somebody can come and look at what's going on at home.
While you're doing that, I mentioned to Mr. President, to Dr. Rogers about this problem of emails in general. There's apparently some bug. Did that ever get fixed about us board members getting emails?
Yeah,
I don't know if anybody else is, but people are complaining that they're coming back. And, I mean, I usually get 10, 20 emails a day, and of course, I've received none, and people are saying, I emailed, and I'm not getting anything for about 3-4 weeks.
Well, I did look into not only you, but there was another board member who had the same issue, and I know personally our tech department had to come for my own machine and upgrade it to the most recent Internet Explorer. I think it's at 9.0 now. I mean, Tom's here, he can say it. But, and it looks different, it feels different. Actually, I don't like it, to be honest with you, but it works, meaning that it was the browser, and so maybe we need to put something out to the public, either on our website or something else, that we can't control for everything, because I think the people who host our website, we don't control them in terms of how they make upgrades. So I think that they made upgrades to the most recent web browsers that are out there. See, the name of our company is called Civic Plus. And so how you get to Civic Plus in terms of all the emails and everything else, usually you got to have the most recent current web browser in the sense of Internet Explorer, Firefox, Mozilla, Google Chrome, or whatever. And so as much as we hate to say it, but the individuals have to personally, in their responsibility, make sure that they have the most recent web browser on their computer, because sometimes those links don't work. Because after I did that, I did email that other board member because I checked all of those emails that this person said that she felt were broken, and every single one of them worked, whether I was on-site or off-site, but it had everything to do with the internet browser. The browser had to be updated to the highest. So if you have an old browser, when you click on a board member's name, you may not get your email, whatever email you use, whether it's Yahoo, Gmail, or what. It may not come up, and it may look like it's broken, but it's not.
So the suggestion for people would be to actually key in the names? Is that going to help?
Well, they can do that. That's the one fail-safe to all of it. Now, let's say you don't want to, I'm not technical-minded, I'm not updating nothing, so to speak. You can still go to Yahoo or whatever, your Hotmail, whatever, and as long as you have the email address of the person, if it's sandersk@yahoo.com or whatever, you can still type that in and it will go through. But you can't necessarily click on the links on our website and it just automatically come up if you don't have the most recent browser.
Any other comments on the consent agenda? If not, we have a motion and a second for the consent agenda, so will the secretary please call a roll?
Mrs. Coletti?
Aye.
Mr. Heisel?
Aye.
Mrs. Sanders?
Aye.
Mrs. Stockton?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Secretary, aye. Mr. Rose?
Aye. Consent agenda is passed with the notes that we had. The next item that we have on the agenda is action reports, which the first item in the agenda for action is to adopt the 2011 tax levy as presented this evening by Mr. Groos, and that you can detailed in your board packet. So I need a recommendation and a motion to approve the 2011 tax levy as presented.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Heisel,
Second?
second by Mrs. Coletti. Comments?
Okay, one of the things that I want the district to be aware of is that, and the people, you all heard about the Finance Committee's discussion, and we did look at ways to lower the levy, and because of the bonding issue, one of the things everyone has to realize is that if we take it from the operating funds, we will lose those monies forever. If we take it out of we don't levy the bonding, sooner or later that comes due, and in one scenario it would have meant lower increases, no increase this year, lower increases for the next 4 years, and in 2016 about a 300 or almost a 10% increase in your property taxes. Tied to that, there were two bills that passed the House of Representatives today down in Springfield. One was Senate Bill 400. That was the one for the for CME, the mercantile exchange, and the other one was for Sears and their tax rebate. Well, it passed the House, and the Senate will probably concur tomorrow when they go into session. And that won't hurt us, but it does have an impact later on, because it means the state is readily giving away tax dollars from corporations and shifting it back to the population. The other bill that passed is Senate Bill 400. This would mean an individual income tax difference for people. It indexed the hike in the standard exemptions so that some people will see an increase in their standard exemptions. The other thing it did, it doubled the earned income tax credit. Now, both of these things sound good. One, if you're a corporation, and two, if you're an income taxpayer like most of us are. The problem is that this is what we call taxable spending. The taxes are not collected, so in effect the state is spending those dollars by not collecting taxes. And last year, actions like that cost school districts across the state of Illinois $939 million, which means the state simply put the burden back on the property taxpayer. So when we start to look at these things, we really need to get organized. And when I mentioned Senate Bill 397, the one that, about Sears, the people up in Carpentersville went in and lobbied Springfield and did it pretty hard, and it saved them about $50 million over the next 10 years. which means they'll get that money as opposed to losing it. And they've already lost over $200 million in the last 20. So I think it's something to look at. And I think the levy is really important for us. It's the only way we can survive.
Any other comments on the tax levy at all?
I only wanted to say thanks to Tom, actually, for sending me your email insights, and of course Bob for forwarding some of the, the packet that you sent me. I mean, and most important, I think, out of all of what I read, is the idea that in the discussion of the finance meeting that you guys did, I know there was some contention last month just about having further discussions, but I'm glad to know that the further discussions have brought forth some different, just some different conversation and different ideas, so it wasn't a waste after all. Thank you for taking that into consideration.
Well, just again, I would like to say thanks because the passing of the tentative tax levy, I was a little apprehensive, but I know by law we had to do that, and I wanted to see further discussion on options that could be used to mitigate any impact that could, hinder the property owners in any way, shape, or form. So having the opportunity to review 4 or 5 options and even go a little further than that and do somewhat of a deep dive into those options, that we have somewhat of an option on the table. So I'm looking forward to that, and that's actually a method of me driving the direction that I'm going to vote on tonight. That's all.
Any other comments at all?
And I just want to get a clarity of possible abatement would mean coming back later. Was it January? It has to be done by March 1st, and to reassess?
No.
No?
It would. Go ahead.
Well, the abatement options that we looked at they essentially include you can sell more debt, you can sell working cash bonds or refunding bonds, which is just a way of restructuring your bond payments over time and lowering the near future payments, but then in the long run increasing the long-term payments. You're just kind of shifting the when the payments come due to a later date. And of course that costs interest to do that, and you have to sell bonds to do that, but it would lower taxes in the short term. So those are the types of options we could look at, and if you do choose one of those options, it just needs to be filed with the county before March 1st. So with that being said, the board would have to pass a resolution to do that in either January or February, so that we would have time to then file the resolution with the county. And then once we file that resolution, then they would just follow whatever the board is asking them to do in terms of restructuring the debt payments.
So are we saying we can look at those options, or we will look at those options?
We will look at those options. It will depend on payments from the state, whether they're making their payments on time, whether they've made up some of the losses, and whether we collect all that they said we'll get. Okay. And if we're running behind, it depends on the shape we're in financially. But we'll look at those in January and February, so at the February board meeting we can make a final decision.
I think at that time for, the full board who, everyone doesn't attend the committee meetings, and that's just, I'm not saying that to make any controversy, I'm just saying that's the fact that everyone can or does not. I think it's important enough that in February that those options, or at least the discussion of those options, probably will come to the full board so that all board members can feel that they're a part of the discussion, and because eventually the board has to vote, the full board has to vote one way or the other, so it has to come to the full board.
Yeah, I think the January and February, both finance meetings and mostly finance meetings, are probably going to be at least the first place where those discussions are going to happen. So I would invite if you have any concerns or whatever, for all the board members to be in attendance at that. It only benefits your knowledge base, to have full knowledge of what everybody else is being presented. We don't hide anything, so, if we're going to offer anything like that it would come before the full board either in January or February, probably more towards the February meeting, simply because January would be a discussion month and then February would be an action month, because we have to do things like that before March 1st. So, that's kind of the take on the abatement or whatever you want to call it, for that. So, do I have any other comments at all on the tax levy at all? If not, then I'd like the secretary please call roll.
Mr. Heisel?
Aye.
Mrs. Sanders?
Nay.
Mrs. Stockton?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Abstain.
Mrs. Coletti?
Aye.
Secretary abstain. Mr. Rose?
Aye. Motion to adopt the 2000 tax levy is approved. The next item on the action items is the authorization to reduce the levy. It's one of those kind of paper management type of things that this board needs to account for. Otherwise, the time frame in order for us to, when the levy adjustment is made early next year, we will not have enough time in order to have a board meeting and authorize the kind of reduction that's going to be needed, as Bob had presented earlier. So, did I say that right, or
Yeah, and
you
I
can
think
make some comments and try to clarify what I'm trying to say, Bob?
well, pretty much the balloon levy amount is so the amount that we would put on the final levy certificate is about $1 million higher than what the calculation is based on the new property. So for this reason, the district is levying $27.3 million in the education fund instead of $26.3 million. So when new property does come in at about $2.5 million, or it's going to probably be right around there, hopefully it's a little higher, but it probably won't be. What I would do then is adjust the education fund back to the $26.3 million. So this action report is just recommending that you authorize me to make that appropriate adjustment so that the final levy certificate, or the final levy that's certified by the county, you're saying that you're okay with me making that reduction in the education fund. And the reason we would make it in the education fund is because that's where we're over levying, the balloon levying that amount right now. All our other operating funds are set at O&Ms of the $5.1 million. IMRF, Social Security was the $1.4 million. We don't want to change those amounts. Those are the exact amounts we want in those funds so that those funds are balanced. This is just asking for that adjustment that happens in April to happen in the education fund.
Moved.
Yeah, and needed a motion to approve that authorization to reduce the tax levy is moved by Mr. Heisel,
Second.
second by Mrs. Stockton. Do we have any other comments?
It's always a good thing when you hear the word reduction. Thanks, Bob. Only comment.
I just have one, and it's actually just piggyback. Since Dr. Rogers had asked earlier, I guess it was in the last board workshop, and I obviously did vote nay, but I want to say that primarily that was, as I still feel, I'm just stuck on not believing that the taxpayers can shoulder and absorb this, whatever, any increase. I mean, I just be honest with you from what I'm hearing, and I have to go with that. But I'm definitely in favor of the review process and the abatement period, and I will be all for that. But and like Board Member Brown just stated, anytime you can hear reduction, and for that matter, no taxes, I would imagine everybody would be smiling. And I understand, I don't think I don't, that we have to do something, but I'm still stuck with the knowledge and the feeling that it's going to be and it's so many uncertainties. I hear Tom constantly. I reviewed your email, Tom, earlier and even last week. It's so many uncertainties. A lot of it was if, and once we do something to affect the tax change, I don't think there's a lot of going back. So that's just my comment.
Any other comments? If not, then will the secretary please call the roll?
Mrs. Sanders?
Yay.
Can you say it again?
Yes.
Mrs. Stockton?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mrs. Coletti?
Aye.
Mr. Heisel?
Aye.
Secretary, aye. Mr. Rose?
Aye. Motion passes to authorize Mr. Cruz to make the adjustments in April. The next action item that we have is a recommendation by the Finance Committee to assess the financial conditions of the district in January and February of 2012 to determine if a abatement for the taxes could be approved by the board. I need a motion in order to approve that recommendation by the Finance Committee.
So move.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Brown, seconded by Mr. Heisel. Any discussion or questions? If there's no questions, then would the secretary please call a roll?
Mrs. Stockton?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mrs. Coletti?
Aye.
Mr. Heisel?
Aye.
Mrs. Sanders?
Aye.
Secretary, aye. Mr. Rose?
Aye. The motion to approve the review of the tax abatement in early next year is approved. The next action item that we have is in regards to curriculum. It's recommended by the administration that the board approve the Monee Elementary, Talala Elementary, and Crete Monee 6th grade center improvement plans. I need a motion in order to approve these school improvement plans for the next couple of years.
Move.
Moved
Second.
by Mrs. Coletti, second by Mr. Heisel. I'm going to leave that up to Mrs. Hirsch.
Under No Child Left Behind, the state of Illinois, the State Board of Education requires us to submit school improvement plans on the state template. We've done 4. Last year we did 4 of them. These are for schools that haven't met AYP for 2 consecutive years. So this year we've got 3 schools that are required to submit those plans. As Mr. Rose said, it's Talala 6th grade center and Monee Elementary. The plans are really more expanded and more detailed versions of the school improvement plans that we brought to you in September, but they have to be on this state template. So the process for the school improvement planning went through, really they took the plans that they had and the reviews that they had from staff and from parents, and they filled it into the template. We had support from a representative from the Regional Office of Education came out and helped the principals with that. And these are 2-year plans, but as we have talked about a little bit, the state is moving to a different form for school improvement, and we're starting next year. They'll be required to do it on under a new system. So while these are 2-year plans, the chances are that we'll be coming back next year with a different format for school improvement planning. But because we are required to do it, we need to get these plans approved for the state this year. So we're recommending that the board approve those.
Laura, one question. Just in looking at the previous ones that were approved, and I think I mentioned this to you in the policy meeting, you have a lot of, because last year I asked the question about the parent piece, and so I noticed in most of these improvement plans there's like an addendum line or of such that suggests, you know, there's like the answer to the question of why so little, people explain the various principles why there was little participation. In other words, their method of reaching out to get community support. So since you guys kind of went out of your way to explain that, do we have any hope, because I noticed it just was kind of dismal as far as the participation. Do we have any methods? Because if we say improvement in the buildings, certainly, and they are, I think Nancy mentioned it earlier with this acknowledgement of the recognition. They're an important part of that. So somehow, I see the addendum and I understand we put forth some effort and very much appreciative, just that I just don't want to see us stop there, because school improvement is just too important for us not to have that buy-in. Actually, it's not so much the input, but their buy-in. If they say that they'll participate in something, or they know what is being required of their kids, hopefully they'll buy into it and obviously get the kids at home and say this and such, or whatever, if it's parent involvement, PTO, whatever. But I'm just hoping we have a strategy and not to just say, well, we weren't able to muster up enough. I don't know if that's in play or something.
Well, I think, for these plans, I know we did have a conversation, and we asked the principals to go back and have some events where they had broad-based participation in events like curriculum nights, where they had a lot of people that were coming in, and actually do some review of the plan that way. And then what they did was they took that feedback, refined plans, and narrowed it down to where they had people review it in its final version. So it did, I want to say it did kind of touch on some new ground that we've done in terms of school improvement planning, where it isn't just you have a parent or two that sits on your school improvement plan. I mean, the principals actually went out and really gave people a lot more opportunity to look at the plan this year. And you'll see it, although the Monee one, I did have to go back and make an adjustment on it today when I was reviewing it again. But they do have parent names under the section that requires, where you can actually put the parent name, but they do outline the process that they went through for it to be reviewed for the plan. But I think what you're also referring to is something much further beyond a school improvement plan. I mean, it's really getting parents engaged in their students' education, which to me is, goes beyond just a document. And I think what we're doing tonight is really a formality to get these approved and comply with what we need to do. So I hope that answers your question.
I just want to say, too, to the board that this year the principals are all under a pilot evaluation program that is a template that is in conjunction with researchers from GSU, Vanderbilt University, and the Illinois State Board of Education. It does require this year that they have 4 goals. One is an academic goal, one is a climate goal, and one is a parent involvement goal, and then there's what's called a standards goal, which is evaluating their practice against national standards. So that alone is new in terms of having a goal centered around parent involvement activities. I will tell you that this year it still is very much a work in progress because we're really trying to concentrate a lot on making sure that this academic goal is right, because next year it becomes official that academic progress will actually be put into their personnel records as far as how that they will be viewed in terms of their performance as far as progressing or not progressing. So we are going to continue to have conversations around parent involvement. I think that we're beginning to make progress in terms of the board's will, that this is important, and not that anyone ever thought it was not important, but how important it is that we really need to work on it. And I do think that there have been some real gains. I'm not going to go into it, but board member Sanders, I think she's the only board member now who's on the oversight committee. But if she's been following the chain of emails, I'm quite proud of the change that is beginning to happen on the oversight committee. Truly, it's just a beginning, but it's shifting out of the hands of the school and the administration and becoming more empowered by the parents, which it probably should have been from the beginning, but there's some real groundbreaking that's happening there, plus the advent of the high school's PTO. No matter what people think about it, they have done some things that has never been done at our high school before, just having parents involved in the many different things that they've been involved in. At dance this year, I saw so many parents, it wasn't funny. I mean, I was just amazed. This banquet, I wanted to attend it yesterday, but I had another commitment. But I heard largest banquet they've had, parents all over the place. Yeah, parent-teacher conferences and so on. So I think there's some real improvement, and hopefully we're going to see more of that in all of our schools. I'm just using that one school as an example, so I do want to let the board know we are taking it seriously. It's being put into the principal's evaluation goals. It's in the plan. We've responded to what you've asked us to do in terms of the plan. Do we have, growth still, as far as progress to make? Yes, we do, but we will continue to work hard at this, because without parents being involved, we'll never be at the place that we want to as far as some of our students and their academic growth. We have to get more parents involved.
And I'd like to make a additional comment, because in reading some of the plans, and I know that, according to the template, you have to list, issues or barriers or whatever, and parent involvement, not just with our district, is an issue, is a challenge. But at the same time, it's been my desire, and I've expressed this, before, about making sure our buildings are parent-friendly, parent-welcoming, where parents feel comfortable coming into our buildings and feel welcomed. I know we had talked previously about possibly doing parent centers within the schools. I would hope to, pick up that conversation more seriously. I know that the superintendent presented a plan, I believe it was last year, but being more serious about that and making sure that our environments are conducive to welcoming the parents and letting them know that we value their input and we value their volunteering, not just in the PTO, but throughout the building as well. So if we're going to note some challenges, I just hope on our end we're making it as easy and as accessible as possible for our parents to be involved.
Anything else at all? I just have one comment in regards to the formatting of some of the slides and presentation that's in the board packet there. I was very confused on some of these because the first item that came up was all Monee Elementary School, but as I tagged through the rest of these, the header continued to say Monee Elementary School for all of the various templates that are in here. You have to really get into the body of some of these things to find 6th grade center in Talala. So I don't know if these need to be evaluated before we submit them to the state, if they're going to hold or tag this, or I'm just curious.
Yeah, it's an internal formatting
that's fine.
For board book. It's not on the state site.
That's fine. I didn't know for sure, but when I was going through it, it was like, oh man, they're all 6th grades. They're all talking Monee, so okay, that's fine. Anybody else? We do have a motion on the floor in order to approve these school improvement plans, so if there's no other comments, would the secretary please call a roll?
Mr. Brown?
Aye. Or yes.
Mrs. Coletti?
Aye.
Mr. Heisel?
Aye.
Mrs. Sanders?
Aye.
Mrs. Stockton?
Aye.
Secretary, aye. Mr. Rose?
Aye. The motion to approve the school improvement plans as presented is approved. The next item we have on the agenda is Freedom of Information Act. I believe that goes to Mr. Elrod.
Over the course of the past month of October, we received 3 requests. One from Anderson Associates, the other from Board Member Hall, and the last one from the Loyola University of Chicago School of Law. As it relates to Anderson Associates, we received a subpoena for records that for a student registered in the district, ranging, there were 11 items ranging from grade reports through medical reports, disciplinary reports, so on and so forth. These were, because they were for a minor child and there were various sensitive records, it was processed through our attorneys and subsequently delivered. All items that we had within our custody were rendered to Anderson Associates. The next item was requested by Board Member Hall, and the items were previous packets. And again, this was due to the fact that she was having some issues with her equipment at home, could not receive these electronically, so she requested packets, board packets for June, July, August, September, October, and November of 2011. All of these packets were given to her by way of paper copy, which she picked up in my office. The last and final request from the Loyola School of Law was for a law advocate situation for a child without legal services. That was also a packet that was put together, and it was sent to them electronically. All those exhibits that I've mentioned and spoken to are in your packet for review. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them at this time. Just one more note. Additionally, we did receive for the record, Mr. Ray Gage, who was at the previous board meeting, submitted a FOIA. However, he submitted it in a Microsoft Works format, so we were not able to open it because of the age of the processing software he used. So therefore, we did respond to him, indicating that if he wished to receive the information being requested, if he would resubmit it, we'd be glad to do that. We were not able to open the email because of the age of the application being used. So I just wanted to note that for the record. We did receive it. We did respond to him in a timely fashion. However, he has not received the information as of yet because he has not resubmitted it. Thank you.
Any question? If not, we'll continue on with the next agenda item, which is an updated 5-year forecast, which was prepared through Mr. Groos. I don't know if you want to make a few comments on that.
Sure. We presented the 5-year forecast at the December Finance Committee meeting. We went through all the details and the assumptions and all the different reports. For tonight, I just wanted to read my summary I put together. Basically, the district currently for 2012 has a projected deficit of about $1.5 million. This is a little bit better than what was budgeted. If you just look at our expenses we have so far, our salaries are a little bit lower than what we originally budgeted. So the forecast for this year is about $1.5 million. Due to adjustments in general state aid, the FY13 deficit is projected to be about $3 million. The reason for the increase in the deficit is because, like I said, with general state aid, the general state aid formula will, for the first time, be taking into account the University Park TIF that expired last year. So all that new property, the $35 million of new property, will, for the first time, be factored into the general state aid equation, therefore lowering the amount that the state gives the district due to our higher property wealth. Then at that point, based on our assumptions, the ongoing annual deficit will remain at about $2 million. So that's what we would call our structural ongoing deficit. So the Finance Committee discussed 4 specific recommendations that would eliminate the $2 million deficit and balance the operating budget by FY15. So if these 4 recommendations are fully implemented, the district should be able to maintain an approximate 19% fund balance ratio and will be financially stable as long as budgets are closely monitored each year and strategic adjustments are made when needed. And you'll see in the board packet the two charts that show basically the one line chart showing our $2 million annual deficit and how our fund balances eventually deplete past zero by FY17. But of course, if we eliminate that deficit with our recommendations, we could level off our fund balance at about $10 to $11 million, which would be a pretty healthy fund balance. It's a little lower than you would want, but at that level, you do not have to borrow tax anticipation warrants annually, which is important. And but at the same time, you really don't have any excess balances, which could be seen, in terms of different, with tax levies and other justifications to say you don't have a huge excess fund balance either. So it's a good medium, it's a good balance, and I think it would be a strong ongoing annual budget. But the key is to implement the recommendations that were discussed, and they just simply involve future contracts and benefit packages and different annual spending amounts and the percentages of increases from year to year. If the board has any questions regarding the 5-year forecast, you can let me know now, or of course at any time. I could go through the longer, more detailed reports that it gets into as much detail as you want to. So we could cover that later, or if there's any questions now, I could take those now.
I just have one. I know I saw in the packet the $23 million capital development.
Right.
And I know you had listed those are a few suggestions. Those are tentative, or you have eyed some of those items for certain? What's your...
So are you asking what will the $23 million, what would they be used for?
Yeah, I see you have some of the items captioned under, but do you have a...
For the $23 million, which the state had awarded to us in a grant, a grant entitlement, but they haven't made payment on that yet, so we're still awaiting or trying to figure out when would we get that money. Once the district does receive that money, then that would prompt many discussions to discuss what will be done with that money. And so, there have been no decisions or formal recommendations made yet on what to use the $23 million for. Obviously, it would probably be primarily used for capital projects around the district, and it would be added to our fund balance, which would help our financial profile score. I don't know, does that answer your question?
I'm looking for Bob, but go ahead.
Okay.
I'll ask you later.
But in terms of the $23 million, though, that's tentative. We haven't received it yet, and they're really, there hasn't been a lot of discussion on exactly what to do with that money yet because we haven't even received it yet.
I just want to say, I want to be clear. I want to say it for the record. I want to say it out loud. I want it recorded in the minutes so there's no mistake about this. For sure, once we receive that money, and hopefully we will before this school year is out, the board will be notified immediately of the receipt of that money by me. I'll do it by email. I might even go as far as phone calls because that's a huge amount of money. Second of all, you need to be assured that this administration is not going to do one thing, spend one penny of that money without the board's discussion and approval on what the plan is. It's not, anyone's personal money. It's the Board of Education, District 201U, well, not even the Board of Education, it's District 201U's money, but the board is the one that governs and will set the direction. Yes, the administration will bring recommendations. We're, in the process of a comprehensive study now. We don't want it to be, the recommendations to be willy-nilly, helter-skelter, hit or miss, spit in the wind. When we present the recommendations to you, we want them to be solid. We want them to be based on data. We want it to have logic to it, rationale, plus the fact that we know that they still may change based on the board's input. because the board is going to have feelings and thoughts and desires and goals and so on about that. So I just want to be clear. I put it in the FYI about, you know, I think I talked about 5 principles or 5 data points that we're going to be looking at, you know, what we're going to base our recommendations on. But, yeah, I think that's what you were referring to. I just want to make sure no recommendations have been made. There is no secret plan. I don't even know what the recommendations are. I just know the principles upon which we're going to base the recommendations. We're still meeting. Bob, myself, and Daniel are the chief principal people that are working, and then my cabinet is folded into it. But like I said, number 1, we're going to notify the board as soon as we get that money. Number 2, the board, the full board, not just one board member or a few board members. The full board is going to be involved in the discussions about that money when that money comes. So I just want to assure the board of that, and I want it on the record.
Any other comments at all? Any information there? Thank you very much, Bob, for the information on that, and
You're welcome.
we'll take everything under advisement as things come along. So with that, the next item on the agenda is old business. Do you have any old business?
You know what, Mark? I'm not sure if this is old business or not. This is pertaining to the consent agenda that was already approved. That be considered old now?
Yeah.
Can we go back in there or no?
Yeah, it's already been approved.
Yeah, there was a section in the business section. I thought the business section was a standalone, but I saw an error on one of the documents here.
Is it a typo error, or is it?
It's a calculation error. Page 32 of 229. And I apologize. I was waiting for the business section. I said, oh, it was under the consent.
On the last page, 229, or in the minutes?
No, page 32 of
30.
220,
Oh, okay.
of 229.
32.
Page 32 is under the approved, the weekly check registries and the payroll for November.
Where's the error?
I'm just doing this in my head, but it looked like there's an error. So if I'm making a mistake, please forgive me. Under the gross pay, the grand total, if you add up those 3 columns, it looked like it's not quite right. I think it's about $101 over, which will affect the total for the grand total.
Which column are you
Yeah,
talking?
on the gross pay, you on page 32?
Page 32.
Gross pay, the gross column, the grand total, which is $2,780,363. It should be $2,780,262. Somebody got a calculator, they can do it. I don't have a calculator, but it looks like it. And that'll affect, I believe, if you take those 2 numbers, gross pay, benefit costs, add those 2 together, that total is going to change. Well, if you look at that last column, 3, 3, and 6, that's 10. I mean, that's 12. But the last number ending in a 3.
Yeah, I added it physically up. It does. It's off by $1 to my. It should be $2,780,362.
Okay.
Because
probably with rounding and stuff.
Cents.
Is it rounded off?
It was rounded off.
It's probably just rounding, but
Well, that's the first time ever.
I want
if
to
it's off
ask,
$1, it's
I want to
a
ask
lot of-
Bob's opinion on the numbers that are actually.
it's only $1. I physically added all
It's
3
rounded
numbers
off.
up.
It's state requirement.
Unless I can't add.
I don't know which
What happens
Right.
is that you probably rounded up to, it could be one or it could be just a total of the cents.
I take that back. I can add, so this is.
It's just $1 off.
That's what it is.
Is it off the dollar amount?
Well, we know that 6 plus 6 is 12. So
right.
we know the first number.
That's what caught my eye.
Well, we do know that much. So the first number in the ones column should be a 2.
Yeah.
But everything else.
Everything else did. Yeah, I just kind of
Everything else does work out.
Okay. Sorry, I don't know what I just saw that came up.
Okay.
I think
It's good. It's good that we're looking at the numbers like that. But again, let me ask Bob the question now, since we've addressed that.
Right.
How accurate these numbers that were being presented on an open sheet like that, where it's not delineated or anything like that? You're
I think
just getting
what we'll
gross
do
amounts there.
in the future, I'll just include the decimal points, because that would eliminate that from ever happening.
Do we really need to?
So we'll just do it to the penny here.
Yeah, I get it.
I'm just asking, how will we correct something like that? Because this is not probably official, the legal, where you put that at, how the accounting methods of it.
Right.
This is just informational for the board, I would tend to think.
This is to
So your
let the board
accuracy
know.
and stuff doesn't have to really be here necessarily as much as what you do in your.
Right, and this is just so on record that the board has approved the payroll for the month. So the fact that it's actually being higher, you're actually approving a $363, so that covers the fact that it should be $362. This is just the same idea as the agenda bills. It's saying that you have the agenda bills, you have every check that was written for the month, you have the weekly check runs, so you have all the check runs for the month. And the only other money leaving the district would be for salaries and benefits. So this is telling you exactly how much was spent on salaries and benefits for the month. So by you approving the consent agenda, you've approved basically all the bills and the payrolls for the month. So as long as the dollar amounts, as long as you're okay with the dollar amounts that are on there.
So really, the approval and stuff is the actual ledger sheets and things like you use to calculate everything versus this actual amount that's on this piece of paper here in the board
That amount,
agenda.
They
should
summary,
match. Believe me, they should match. But
I believe if those amounts were not rounded and it showed the decimal amounts, it would be to the penny of what we actually spent. But I think with the rounding on the 3 figures above, and then when you add it below manually, see what it is I don't think that's an Excel spreadsheet that they use to populate the 3 amounts. They round the one figure and then the next figure, and then they add it like with a calculator. So that's why it's off that dollar, which is going to happen sometimes if one amount is like at 49 cents and then the other one is at 51, and they round up or down on one of the figures, it could be off $1. I think that it's over is good, because then at least you're approving a higher amount. But I think for next month and every month going forward, I'm just going to put the pennies on there. But the 2 decimal amounts, because I don't want that to happen anymore.
Okay.
So what you're saying, because I'm looking at the sheet and I get what Mark is saying, but these numbers are actually taken off of the spreadsheet and then put on this.
These numbers
sheet.
are
They're
given
not
to
totaled on this actual
my
sheet.
secretary from payroll. She puts the amounts into this Word document, actually, and then she adds it up with a calculator and puts the amounts in there. She's been doing it since Angie was the business manager, and if there's an error on this, I might just do this. I'll add these up myself from now on.
It's not an error. I told Board Member Brown, and for the benefit of the whole board, what it is, what you don't see, and it just needs to, either we need to put the cents in there or put a note on this that when the transfer is made from an Excel document to a Word document, there's pennies behind each one of these, but they never carry the cents over. So it looks like it's a rounding up. It will never be, it should never, ever be more than $1 up or $1 down.
Right.
Just because there's pennies behind, these. But they always cut it off at the pennies because it would make the formatting of it longer. You would have to reduce the print size or the font size to get all of the numbers on there. So as we learned in the workshop, is the pleasure of the board.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want the cents, we can do the cents.
I don't think we need the cents, but you can pick a category where the numbers could be, the dollars could be rounded up or down, but the dollars I believe, should match up. So
yeah, if I agree, if you're going to take those numbers
right.
and add them together, you would see they would end with 362.
Yes.
But what happened is I just know from doing this myself in the past is the three numbers above she rounded,
right,
and then the number on the bottom took the subtotal from the separate sheet of paper and put that at the bottom instead of just adding the three numbers above. So that's the disconnect between the rounding that you see happening. So the only what should happen is you should add the three above and make sure what you have written above adds down to what's on the bottom.
Yes.
But when you just take the figures from a sheet and you're transferring them over, and if you're rounding as you go, and then the last figure you take the subtotal, it's going to be off a dollar. But we don't want it to be off a dollar.
Does that answer your question,
ever again.
Mr. Brown? Does that take care of your question there, Maurice?
Yes,
okay.
sir.
Can we clarify, though, like say this was actually the other way around and we only approved 363 and then it should have been 364. How would that have affected? Would we have to revote?
No, I think if we just had noted in the minutes that we, cited the mathematical error there and that it was a rounding issue, and that.
And ISB, you won't look at it unless it's more than a $100 error.
Yeah, and we're actually approving his ledgers, which has all of the detail going into the pennies. We're even though we're generalizing it here on this one word spreadsheet here and stuff, but right. So any other old business then? Any new business?
Yes. I have 5 statements to make. They're all short. The first one is to let the board know that I will be writing an FYI this week. It will hopefully, unless something happens next week that is at the level of an emergency of some sort, it'll be the last one for this calendar year because next week we only have a 3-day week. This one in particular is going to be very important. It's going to be short, but there's one point I just want to make sure that you do read. If you have any questions, you can contact me. The second issue was an email that was sent to me from a local pastor of a church who made me aware that we have a child in our district. I'm not going to mention the name, but I do have it in front of me. I want our board president to see this, one of our other board members. I can't show. I meant to copy this and give it to you, but it's a child who has been missing since November of this year, which is really just a few weeks ago, and she is in a national database now. So it's actually public information. She's in the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. The only reason why I'm bringing it to your attention, because actually this was published by the University Park Police Department, is the parent/community member/pastor asked me if I would mind posting this on our website or at least giving our parents information about this missing child, just in case anyone knows anything about the child or her whereabouts, that the more people who know, the more that we can, possibly find her. We've never had this request before. We've never done it, and personally, I don't see an issue with it if the child is in a public database by a police department. As I said, it's just a missing child. But before I just put it up on the website and then I started getting all kinds of phone calls, I just wanted to make sure I wanted to hear the pleasure of the board as to whether or not this is something, if this happens now or in the future, does the board or even my administration, does anyone see any concern in posting this information on our website. Like I said, it's a missing child. It is one of our students. It was published by the University Park Police Department, and she is in the national database for the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Anyone have a comment, issue, or question?
I just want to say I saw there's an email chain going around with her picture for about 3 weeks. And certainly she's a part of our district family. I can't imagine why we wouldn't do something to help expedite her safe return home. I just think as you asked the question, I think on our responsibilities, if we're what is the goal? We are supposed to report abuse and those kind of things to the proper government authorities. I can't imagine why we wouldn't participate in something that is of this magnitude. It's my opinion on it.
Yeah, I don't see how doing that would be a problem. I just want to make sure that it's formatted correctly and that the correct links go out, and that it doesn't kind of take over the home page if that's where it's going to be at or something like that. So,
Mr. Elrod.
There's nothing that I'm aware of in statute that will prohibit us from doing a public access announcement
sort of like a public service announcement.
Right. There's nothing that I've come across at all, and I don't see anything that would preclude us from doing it.
And I would just personally would like the parents to either sign off on that in some manner.
That's probably appropriate to at least acknowledge the parents and see, because first of all, the person isn't their parent, and so I understand it's public information.
Sure,
probably we could do this without being sued or anything, but I think that just out of courtesy,
out of
courtesy to the parents, I think that that's something that, and if the parents don't have an issue with it, then I think that it should be okay. If they do have an issue with it, then I think that we should respect. I don't see why the parents would object, but I think we ought to respect the wishes of the parents if they would say, for whatever reason, they don't want it on our website.
Sure, absolutely.
Is that okay with the rest of the board? Okay. I just want to make sure, because we got enough issues without creating issues. I want to remind the board, I will put this in the FYI, that I think I put it in the last one too, but I'm just reminding you, on January 21st of 2012, we will have that Saturday finance workshop where we'll go over the entire budget line item by line item. I would like for you, whoever would like to attend that, to respond by next week, Wednesday, because that would be the last day that we'll be in session until probably January 6th, I think, is when we come back. So as I said, I'll put it in the FYI, but if you would like to attend, I would like for you to respond by next week, Wednesday. Yeah, 9 to 3 on the 21st, and hopefully it won't take that long, because I've looked at what Bob has, and he's put this thing into a really nice format where, unless you have a lot of questions, it can go pretty fast. I do want to say this, unless the board or the president or whoever tells me absolutely not. In the FYI, I'm also going to tell you about a need to post a nurse's position. I will provide the data. We're having more medical issues. I'll show you the schedule of why. Obviously, we're not going to hire anybody unless it goes through the Personnel Committee, which is going to be my last point. We need to set a Personnel Committee date in January to discuss minimally 2 things. One would be this nurse's position. The other one is a personnel issue, obviously. So I'm suggesting, Madam Chair, which is Nancy, if you could look at your calendar, you first, and then the other Personnel Committee members, if you would also look at the same time. I'm proposing Friday, January the 13th, at 8:30 a.m., and I just wanted to know, first of all, Madam Chair, will that work for you?
Yes, that's
okay. to the rest of the Personnel Committee members. I believe it's Mr. Heisel, Mrs. Hall, and Mr. Brown, I think, are on the Personnel Committee.
No, correction. Personnel Committee?
Personnel, are you on Personnel?
I have
I'm
enough
not sure.
committees, but not personnel.
Okay, well then, just the three that I named, unless there's, or anybody else. I mean, anybody can come, but then I believe then it would just be Mrs. Hall, Ms. Coletti as chairperson, and Mr. Heisel. So it's January the 13th, that's Friday, at 8:30 a.m. at Central Office. Will that work?
That'll work.
Okay. Okay, so January 13th it is. And then the last and final thing is just a comment, because I think I covered the personnel, board FYI, the poster, the 21st, and the nursing position. We will post the nursing position, like I said, but we're not going to hire anybody. I need to post it to get it sort of started, because I need you to trust me that we do need the position. But if the personnel committee tells us that we can't have the position, then we just won't interview anybody. I just want to say that I do appreciate, I think that we're coming along. Although, again, I'm just going to say it publicly, and I think the people will take it in the right spirit, that I would wish, you know, that on the levy that, you know, everyone could have voted in a positive fashion. But what I will say that I appreciate every single board member who had concerns. They called, they asked all kinds of questions, they came to meetings. I do understand, I appreciate Mrs. Sanders tonight stating what she stated, and hopefully we'll get to the place where we can all have a depth of understanding where we can, as much as possible, have a unified position on this, even though I know that that's not always possible, but that's my personal goal. So you can't take my personal goal away from me, because it is my personal goal. It may never happen, but at least I'm telling you what I would like for us to, what I want to strive for with the board. So thank you very much for everything that you've done, and I appreciate, again, your support.
I have an additional, real quick. I did contact the superintendent in regards to the around the district segment of our board meeting, just expressing my concerns of what I believe was the original intent of that portion of the board meeting. And he did communicate with me. Maybe there was some discrepancy as far as what it was actually meant for, because my concern was that we make sure that we are offering this time and this space to every school in the district. That's what I believe the original idea was, because as we've been seeing one school in particular more than others, and last year we did not see, I believe it was 2 or 3 schools. So I did contact him, and I just wanted to make the full board aware of that. I do have a concern with that, and I would like for each one of our schools to be able to be showcased and to bring in whatever, and I expressed this to Dr. Rogers, whatever they felt they wanted to share. It didn't have necessarily to be a special program or, something elaborate, but whatever, they want to show to the board, because all of us cannot visit all of the schools, and I may go into a school and see something that other board members are not able to see. So I feel like, that would be a time for the schools to come in and show us what's going on in their schools, and whatever they decide they want to showcase, that that would be fine. So I just wanted to make sure that I put that out to the entire board.
Yeah, I just want to say in response, and then President Rose can speak maybe in relation to you in our board workshop that dealt with this very issue, or some of the issues that we are confronted with. I just said, Nakia and I actually attended IASB workshop. I think even Melissa was with us, that sort of spawned in part, not in total, this idea of doing board recognition on a monthly basis. And yes, the original plan was that year, which was last year, is to make sure that every school got on the agenda. There were 3 schools that weren't. I never had, and I told her this, so I'm not saying anything that I didn't tell her. I wasn't under the impression, especially from the ISB presentation, it wasn't necessarily about schools being presented every month as much as it is putting out good news no matter where it comes from. And so I felt, as I told her, that in year 2 I felt more of the idea of showcasing programs that board members have inquired about, such as the early college program, such as the Kankakee Career Center program, and so on. And I know that most of them are from the high school. But to me, it wasn't about the school as much as it was about the program and the success of the program. I do understand, Board Member Hall's issue and concern. I asked her, I said, personally, I've set the schedule. I really want to complete at least what we set out this year. The 3 schools that didn't report are on the agenda. And I said, the next year we can return back to schools coming in every month. And I can try to even get a few of them to come, but I think you would just have to understand that when we set this in the beginning of the year, principals, start working hard to work toward that presentation. And I think mid-year to start asking people to come in, whether it's large or small. And I understand if it's small, it's not that big of a deal. But I just said, let's take it to the board and let's see what the pleasure of the board is, because I want the board to direct me as far as to find out what the entire board wants, because right now, I'll just be honest, I want to keep the schedule the way it is, but I will do what the board wants me to do.
Mr. President, I'm going to just add, because I didn't know that you changed it to that layout. I thought that it was initially to showcase, when you say around the district, and I know that when we were going through the cuts, there was an allegation or suggestion. No, it was an allegation, actually, from one of the schools right in this very audience that stated they can barely get us to make an acknowledgement of their school. So we're a full district. I can't imagine that there aren't good things. I've been to, this year, I think I've been to every school, probably except Talala. They have to be doing something that they could present. Is it that big of a deal to add them? Because there is a statement that the high school, and I know we're working to make some improvements, but that kind of looks biased in nature. So are we trying to come across, can we just adjust it in some manner? And you take MEC as a perfect example. I think I heard you tell me that there was some special pilot that you were going to present last year, and I don't know, is it still in place? But I was excited to hear about what was going to happen there.
Yeah, it's on. I did that's how Nakia contacted me, because I did put it in the FYI. So it's not that I changed it. It's just I presented the schedule for this year, and I gave the board the schedule for the whole year. Yeah, and I think I tried to justify why I did it, but maybe I didn't do a good job. So I thought that I was doing a good thing by bringing programs that we had. Yes, I do. Like I said, I know that I'm not arguing that point, that it's the majority of what's being recognized this year is coming from our high school, but I also think our high school is the one that's been beat up a lot too, and I'm not trying to be biased. I'm just saying that yes, I could work toward getting a couple more schools in, but I just don't want to promise that right now if the decision is still mine, unless the board directs me to say we want more schools on there. If you say, that's all you have to say. If you say that as a board, I'll do it, no problem, but I would prefer to keep it the way it is. That's just if you want my personal opinion, I'm giving it to you. I still have the right for my personal opinion, don't I? Okay. All right.
We can take some input from everybody. I like to try to keep it, somewhat short, but I think John's developed a schedule for this year and stuff, and I understand the issues of some schools not presenting something possibly this year or whatever. I think this is kind of new to how we're working these kind of things, and we're learning through communication, through all kinds of things that we're trying new and exciting over here. So, unless somebody's got a real problem or something like that, I understand that maybe Talala's not going to present something this year, but next year maybe they're the first ones in September to do something or whatever, or
That's
something.
what we were told last year for the ones that were not presented, and now they're on the end of the schedule, and who's to say something else may not come up. Again, it was implemented as around the district. I enjoyed the presentations last year. We had a variety of things that were showcased, and like I said, I just contacted the superintendent because when I looked at that list, all I saw was CMHS, 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 and again, I believe that I was the one that brought it up, and I think Mr. Heisel second, just wanted to see each school, wanted to see what's going on around the district.
Okay.
And to say, oh, we can't adjust it. We have, 5 months left in the school calendar or so, 5 or 6 months, and I just don't see how difficult it would be to ask a school to come and present something that's already going on to the board members. I don't see the difficulty with that, personally.
Anybody else want to comment at all? I think, if the concern by one member is something that we should address, the presentations like that, I think, if we could work it out where we could get Talala to do something, or the ones that are out there, not doing something, maybe somebody can minimize their presentation a little bit to allow them to present or whatever, or we make some time considerations for that, to do it yet this year. I think that's something that at least would, let Nakia, state her case, and I think it's a good thing one way or the other that they would do something like that. So, if we can work out the logistics of it, I think, why don't we go ahead and try to do something like that. And I don't want to dictate what they're going to do or anything like that, but to have them just show their face and be a part of the presentation, I think is a good thing, and I think that would satisfy Nakia's request there, and make it look everybody else is participating in it also. So,
all right, I will certainly go back to the administrators and make that I will express to them what needs to be done, and we will try to put the variety in it as much as possible.
Okay. Is that okay? Any other new business at all? If there's not, then I'd like to just simply wish everyone a happy holidays. Thank everybody for all the hard work that they do all year, reading packets, going to seminars, doing whatever we need to do as board members. So it's definitely appreciated by the parents, students, and the community as a whole. And also, I, as the president, want to recognize everybody here to continue the hard work that everybody does. So happy holidays. Thank you very much. And I need a motion here to adjourn.
Moved.
Moved by Mr. Heisel.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Stockton. All those in favor of adjourning? Aye. Those no? Abstentions? None? We are adjourned.
Happy
Thank you very much.
Talala should hurry back. Last year they brought food. Remember that? Like, Merry Christmas. That was silly. They brought food and vegetables. Hope Santa comes to visit you.
Now, you just thought it. Yeah.
It's the only first time I've been on the board since we got out here.
Brown?
Yes.
See you. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
You going anywhere?